The swarm had spread through the entire nebula, converting every material within it into new nodes. Its spectra were unlike anything humanity had ever seen. No wonder the Ashra Society had described that strange, otherworldly spectrum with alarm. Preliminary naval analysis calculated that the conversion process had taken well over 1 billion years, which, oddly, was comforting. Every scouting mission had shown the swarm's growth ending at the outskirts of the nebula. There were no indications that neighboring systems had been or were being converted. Orders from Central Command had been unambiguous: analyze the phenomenon, assess its threat matrix, and if required, contain or destroy. Basic capture-or-kill protocols were authorized, and they had even allowed certain extremely cutting-edge hardware to be deployed under the Canada Protocol. Admiral Pierce did not know which was more unnerving: an artificial multi-layered swarm operating under set constraints, or a Black Ops division so secret and advanced that it simply shrugged and offered to destroy the threat. All that was known about the special escort was that nothing they possessed could register the escort's hull on any scan, even though the ship visually resembled a standard Kennedy-class frigate. Fortunately, the swarm appeared to be in a dormant, housekeeping state. Still, Pierce had nightmares about single swarm units slowly drifting through the void and slipping into core systems without warning. Scans had not shown any such incursions. After a month of observation, nothing larger than a ball-bearing-sized object had been detected at a distance of roughly a light hour from the nebula. The swarm had a definite boundary. Nothing moved beyond it, and anything that drifted inward eventually made contact with a swarm unit that likely switched into resource utilization mode. The process was agonizingly slow. Deep scans revealed older units being disassembled and their materials recycled into the construction of new units. An accelerated simulation displayed a mesmerizing churn. Units connecting, regenerating slowly, moving through the nebula in vast, wave-like patterns, rebuilding and repairing themselves for millions of years. The science team muttered about transcription errors and von Neumann cascades, though they were always bickering among themselves. What mattered was that all findings indicated the swarm was a stable, self-repairing system confined to this single nebula. As to why it remained confined, they could not say. Even stranger was the fact that all probes and scouting vessels sent into the nebula were ignored. Either the swarm was far slower to respond than anyone expected, or, more troublingly, it had identified those ships and classified them as something other than resources. One scout had even pulled a swarm unit into its science bay under the watchful eye of the special escort. Admiral T had confided privately to Pierce that, if the Canada Protocol were enacted, his fleet and the special escort would be sacrificed as well, which made a chilling sort of sense. There was a knock at the door. "Enter," Pierce called. Madam P., head of the research detachment, marched in, clearly excited. Trailing behind her were the head of the artifact inspection team and a very sheepish young researcher Pierce had not met before. "To what do I owe this honor, madam?" Pierce asked. "The next briefing is at 1600 hours, she said. Technically French royalty and holder of multiple doctorates, she preferred to be called madam, efficient and infuriating in equal measure. "There has been an incident and a major breakthrough. I am sorry, Admiral, but I am not certain how to describe this." The head of inspection opened his mouth, then hesitated and nudged the young researcher forward. "It will be simpler to hear it from the horse's mouth," he said. The researcher, a thin, nervous man with disheveled hair and stains on his uniform, looked around, then forced out, "Sir, we were analyzing the clutch when I noticed short-range frequencies that were active. From what appeared to be a phased array transmitter, the swarm unit itself, sir. It looked like a crude collection of electronics thrown together in a hurry, almost improvised, but unmistakably alien. I began tracing its output, and the pattern strongly resembled a form of communications protocol. I reverse-engineered it and discovered it was sending what we would call a handshake indicator." Pierce narrowed his eyes. "Small words. Explain that." The young researcher swallowed. "A handshake indicator is, well, my name is Michael, sir. Basically, it was waiting for another signal to respond. Once it got a response, it could connect and begin receiving and transmitting instructions." The head of the inspection team raised a hand. "For the record, Admiral, he was only supposed to monitor the signals and report them." Pierce cut him off sharply. "Let him speak." Michael nodded nervously. "Well, sir, the protocol was very simple. Almost too simple. It was just a matter of identifying the function. It did not take me long to replicate a valid response. Once I did, a communication session opened." Pierce's neck prickled. "A session? You mean you started communicating with it?" "Yes, sir. We have more than 3 centuries of computer engineering records, as well as data from alien systems we have previously encountered. Using those references, I was able to access its operating system. From there, extrapolating was surprisingly easy. Pierce's stomach tightened. So, you communicated with the unit? At first I thought so, sir. But it became clear they used some form of subquantum communication. I realized I could scan all the nodes in the nebula from here, access their telemetry, and even ping the battleship Butler in real time. Pierce's blood went cold. The Butler was 5 light-years away on the far side of the nebula. Even with faster-than-light relays, a message should have taken over 2 hours to reach them. Almost on cue, his intercom chimed. Priority message from the Butler, Admiral. There has been activity in the swarm. The node closest to the ship has transmitted a message in clear text, over a standard radio frequency. What was the message? Pierce demanded. The officer hesitated. It said, "Hello world." Madame Petite buried her face in her hands. Benson looked like he might vomit. Michael, on the other hand, was practically glowing with excitement. It was so easy, sir. I didn't think I could reverse engineer their protocol so quickly. It was almost as if they wanted it to be easy. Or maybe they had no safeguards at all. Pierce fixed him with a glare. Your equipment. Was it secured? Of course, sir. I followed every first contact protocol, every intrusion safeguard I could think of. Triple firewalls, isolation layers, everything. And then what happened? Michael hesitated. Well, sir, it turns out the nodes, and the ones connected to them, only use about 10% of their processing power for housekeeping. The rest is dedicated to running simulations. Emulations. Virtual environments, if I had to guess. I was already in deeper than I should have been, but I didn't want to tamper with their existing programs. So, I decided to see if I could run one of my own. Pierce pinched the bridge of his nose. He had a sinking feeling he knew where this was heading. You decided to run the Doom test, didn't you? Michael blinked, surprised. Oh, you've heard of that, sir? Yes, Pierce said dryly. It's a well-known stress test. A way to measure compatibility and processing capacity by running the old Earth video game Doom. No need to explain. My brother-in-law is a xenobiologist. One of his teams once ran Doom on a continent-wide silicon neural network on Cerasis V. It took 3 months, but it worked. Michael's eyes lit up. That's incredible. I'm sorry, sir. That really is amazing. Anyway, it took some trial and error, but I managed to get an emulator running on one of the nodes. And that's when it happened. Pierce noticed Madame Petite had gone pale. What happened, son? Spit it out. I was able to get the game running. All the logs showed clean, no errors, no breaches. So I started a single-player session just to confirm stability. Then I went on my lunch break. When I came back, I noticed a second player had joined. Pierce's heart seemed to stop. He could practically feel the special escort frigate monitoring every word of this conversation. A second player? Someone else in your lab? Michael shook his head rapidly. No, sir. Everything was air-gapped and contained. This player was not from our systems. It came from the swarm. Pierce's jaw tightened. Go on. Michael licked his lips. We played about 4 matches. Then, another player joined. And this one sent me a message. You're telling me the swarm messaged you? Yes, sir. Doom has an in-game messaging function. It used that. Pierce forced himself to stay calm, his face unreadable. What did it say? Michael hesitated, then whispered. Cool game. Can we play too?